start of the podcast, I always had an idea in my head to like start each episode kind of chronologically, like talking to artists about like their origin story.
Oh, okay.
But it just never worked out like that. I don't know, because it seemed like we planned things and then things went better when we
Yeah.
just let
We
like
just let it
conversations
happen.
take their
Yeah.
course. But I want the Jake origin story.
Okay. I think the earliest memory of me ever drawing something was when I was in church, and we used to, me and my siblings would like sprawl out in the pews and just like color and draw, because my parents were big into like making us sit through the sermon, and of course that was really boring to me as like a 7-year-old. So I would draw, and I remember drawing on like the little what's it called, like the little cards they give newcomers, and I would draw people's portraits of people in the other pews, and I would give it to them afterwards. And
Oh, that's so cool.
I just remember like being really excited about it, like giving it to them. Um, my mom had this illustration, of Mucha, Alphonse Mucha, one of his paintings. And it was like one of those things where I think it was a color by number or something. And if you see his work, it's just gorgeous. It's very strong composition and these big sweeping lines. And I remember being very young. I still have it in my closet. I love it so much. And I just remember being like so in awe of this painting. It was just the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And I think I drew it probably 100 times. Like I would sit there and I would try to draw it over and over again. I remember getting really frustrated because I couldn't replicate it in the same way. But that was probably my like spark, was that painting, and then of course drawing like in church. So I don't know. And then that's part of it. I in high school I drew a lot. Probably the most. I like to think of my high school art thing as like my renaissance kind of. I just exploded. I remember like coming home from co-ops or wherever I was, and I just wanted to draw. That's all I wanted to do was sit down and draw. And I don't have that anymore, really. I have to push myself a little bit more now, but that was like a really big important time for me. Like I discovered DeviantArt then, and I was like, this is the coolest thing. There's other people that like love art as much as me. And I would draw, and I would instantly scan it and upload it. I did all these pen and ink drawings, and I had my iPod Nano, and I would put Owl City in, and I would sit there and just draw like all night, constantly. And I love that. I loved that time so much because I was a lot less critical of my own work. I didn't even think twice. I would just do it and upload it, or show it off to people, and I didn't care. And now I think I'm a lot more critical of my stuff. So that's something that's definitely changed since then. But yeah, that was a really important time for me. I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah.
Was there like a moment where you realized that you wanted to pursue art as a career? Like, because I know last week I mentioned the whole thing about the book thief, and was there a time when did you ever have that kind of turning point, or was there a moment where that kind of became a reality for you?
I think probably when I had to pick what I wanted to do for college. I didn't really think too much about it, but it was always kind of in the back of my mind. And then when I had to decide what I wanted to do for school, like I really had to make a decision and start exploring actual options. My mom always said that I would be a good editorial illustrationist, or editorial illustrator. So like she mentioned that to me at one point, and I was like, oh, maybe I could picture myself doing that. Like at one point I wanted to do art therapy. That was like a viable option for me. And then I think it was probably, well, both my parents, my dad mostly, that was like, yeah, you're not cut out for that. And he was right. He was right. I was upset that I had to say no to that, but I think would have been too mentally taxing for me. But in the end, like I still do want to help people with my art, and I try to do that as much as I can. And maybe that comes back to like when I was giving people art in church. I don't know. I love the look on their face when I would give them something. So
I think that totally makes sense, because I've known you for a little while, and I think the circumstance that pretty much surrounded us becoming friends was that you drew me once.
Really?
Yeah, it was that time when I had just finished knitting my first scarf, and I think I posted something on Tumblr or something about being upset, and you drew me in my red scarf.
Oh, in your scarf. Oh, I do remember
Yeah.
that. Oh, that's when you had a lot.
Yeah.
Your hair was a lot longer then. Yeah, I do
Really?
remember that.
Yeah, it was longer. I had kind of seen your art a little bit, and then you drew that, and then I think we just became very quick friends. And you draw art for people all the time. Like you do that thing where you draw people in suits of armor.
Yeah. Well, I think it changes people's perception of themselves. That's like, and they know that someone cares about them, and maybe it helps them like fight dragons or something. The one I drew, Scott had like he was like cutting a dragon's head off. It was kind of cool, but and I other people have done that for me, and that's always been really special for me when I receive something. So
It I don't exactly know how to describe it, but there is something so special about being given art,
yes,
especially if it's art of you or
hmm
art like because I know it puts me over the moon when people like draw my characters for my stories and
yep,
things. I don't know, it's like a just a really special process of giving back to the people who inspire you.
yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. I can't do much else. It's not like I can get like what do? You give your friends money when they're down? Like no, like I want to it's something that I always have in me. Um
Mhm.
like the ability to create something and that's how I try to like give back and I try to do it as often as I'm able. It
Mhm.
doesn't always work out because I'm just a moody ball of mush sometimes, but yeah, that's the way I give back, I guess. I don't know.
So you didn't go to art school, but I think you still have like a really great grasp on your craft. And so I don't know. How do you feel about whether or not artists need to go to college to hone their craft in a certain way? Because you didn't have to.
I think if someone had come to me and say like, should I go to art school? I would say it depends on where you want to get a job. A lot of like people won't even take you for an internship if you don't have some sort of like at least a 2 year degree. So that is unfortunately necessary, but you don't need to go to college to be a great artist. That's not necessary. A lot of things you can learn on your own, and if you have find it somewhere within you to do it yourself. Um, Again, one more nice thing about college is you have deadlines. I mean, I guess it's not a nice thing, but it's something that pushes you and makes you want to get something done. So if you're not a very self motivated person, maybe that's one thing that'll kind of kick you into gear. That's one thing that helped me. I think helped me get more focused. I wouldn't have drawn for 6 hours a week straight, or painted for 6 hours a week straight if someone wasn't telling me to. And my grade didn't rely on me getting the homework done. So that was one thing that I learned. But you can learn how to be focused in other ways. So, um, yeah, you kind of have to pick and choose. It's not going to be black or white. I think with school, there's a lot of gray areas in terms of what you're going to be able to take with you and what you're going to leave behind.
Mhm.
That's well, that was certainly the case for me. So
Yeah. I think with artists, it's important that we are kind of taking in input and growing in a way by learning from the things around us. So with me, it's like reading the work of my peers and keeping up with what's going on in the writing world and what kind of stuff is getting published and all that. So where do you get like your input that helps you grow as an artist?
do you want to hear about like visual artists and stuff? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just curious as to like what you see influencing you, because if we talk about going to school, like that's a very clean cut thing you learn from, and since you didn't necessarily have a specific school thing that influenced your art or taught you about the kind of art that you do, I'm just interested in hearing about the things you consume that you see helping your art develop.
Video games have been really big recently. Gen Z does the art for this game Transistor. Carl, you told me about it, and I'm just obsessed with her work.
Mhm.
It's just so stunning. The
Yeah.
colors, the movement, the characters, just absolutely gorgeous. I just like the other day I stalked her on DeviantArt and I looked at like her very first painting that she uploaded and of course it was like awful. And then I clicked through every single one to see how she progressed because I want to know there's hope for me. So she's been a huge influence lately. Really beautiful.
Yeah. I love
Um,
when that I love when that happens when we can get fixated on an artist and like study what they do and their style and stuff and try to like directly channel
yep.
things from their work. Like not copying, but taking
I
direct
think
inspiration.
channel's a really good word, and it's challenging too because when I find a really great artist, like I have to get over being like super jealous at first, and that takes a little while. But then, like you said, you start channeling something and
Hmm.
in your own like style. I don't like that word,
Yeah.
but
You don't like the word style?
well, because people get really obsessed with it, they all they want to do is find their own style, and they like, and maybe that pushes them to copy others, and that's in doing so they do find their own style. But I've seen so many people who get frustrated that they don't feel they have a distinct enough style, and it stops some people dead in their tracks, or like they weren't serious enough about it, and they were discouraged because they couldn't find their own style, and like that's not the reason we create. We don't create to find our own style. We create because it makes us feel a certain way, or we're passionate about it in the
Hmm.
first place, and then those other things come afterwards. So I think that term can be a little distracting sometimes. It's not something that doesn't exist. Like people have distinct styles, but
Hmm.
a lot of
Yeah.
people get very distracted by that.
Yeah, I don't know. In some cases, I think it's just like an interesting thing to think about because I look at your art and I think you have a very distinct style.
See, I
Um,
don't even see it, so and
yeah,
I'm
but
not
and
even
then
like
it's the
yeah.
same with me though. I look at my art and I don't know, like it's my art. I can see it as a thing, but it feels just like normal. Like that's
Yep.
just what it is. I can't identify the bits and pieces of it that make it what it is. Whereas if I look at other artists, I can say they do simplistic things. They don't like, I don't know, they do this and that.
Yeah,
And you
you could still
look.
see even though they're doing very different things, you could still see that commonality between them of
Mhm.
what they're putting in. I agree. I had the same problem. I look at like stuff from 3 months ago and I'm like, this who did this? I didn't even draw this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know I get that too.
But I
It's
don't know. I think it can be helpful for artists to study other artists and to like, because when I was younger, there were artists that I really loved, and I tried to. There were things they did in their art that I found really endearing that I tried to bring into my own art. Not necessarily because I wanted to make a specific style, but because I liked what that did visually, and
yeah,
it felt like home to me in a way, which is
I love it.
the a cheesy way to talk about something.
No, that's when you look at a piece or even a whole portfolio for an artist and you just like fall in love with it. I think that's a good way to put it. You
Mhm.
feel like you're at home. It just fits. Like it feels so
Yeah.
right, and you just see it in their art. I love, and those are the artists that inspire me too. Like it just,
Mhm. Do you have any artists whose work feels like home to you that you can name?
yes, Brett Helquist, who is the illustrator for a series of unfortunate events. His work is like huge to me. He has an Etsy, and
Wow.
if you order from his Etsy, he sends you like a little personalized note. It's so cool. But his stuff is really just when I was reading the books, I couldn't wait to see the illustrations, and I kind of describe him as like Tim Burton but more classy. I don't like to
Hmm.
compare people to Tim Burton. But like almost like a lot of gothic stuff, very architectural, a lot of very angled lines, but still like very strong compositions and really great character design. Really, really beautiful stuff, and he influenced me to focus on faces. For a long time,
Mm.
I wasn't drawing people's faces. I would cover them up. I used to draw a lot of blank faces in my drawings because I was like, oh, that's a cool art motif. But I think it was a crutch after a while, and then after looking at his art, and he really his characters are just very very thoughtful. So and that really inspired me to grab that from him. I think another artist who probably everyone has seen is Loish. I brought her up every once in a while, but again, she's one of those artists that you just know absolutely loves what she does, and she's actually doing it for a living. Like
Hmm.
she
She
does a
is
lot.
living the dream,
She
like
is living the
100%.
dream. Yeah. And it was cool to follow her on DeviantArt a while ago and like see where she started from as well. And that's so encouraging to me. I love to do that because like these are just like normal, like they're normal people, I don't know, like anyone could be like a great artist if they try hard enough. And I know it sounds so cheesy, but like they didn't, they weren't born with special powers or anything. They just worked really really hard and loved what they did.
Hmm.
Maybe they didn't always love it, but like they still pushed through, and here they are. They're coming out the other side. Yeah, they're just inspiring people, and they're actually making money doing it, which is
Hmm.
cool too. Um, but yeah, probably Brett Helquist. Um, Loish is another one. Muka, I mentioned before, Alphonse Muka. He still inspires me. His work is just gorgeous. He does a lot of personification. Like he'll do different seasons as like a person, and that is just
and flowers and stuff.
Yeah, very flowery. Like
Art Nouveau.
Art Nouveau. Yeah.
I just remember that from an art history course I took. He was Art Nouveau.
During the 1880s,
it was very derived from nature.
A
lot of organic shapes and lines.
I have like a huge list. I can go on and on it. Yeah.
We could just fill an episode with naming artists we like. You mentioned talking about artists being born with certain skills and something, and I know this is a topic that you're very invested in, so I want to hear you talk about it. And it's a fable that you've talked about a lot, and I think kind of one of the founding fables for Fablebreakers, you could probably say, the idea of whether or not artists are born talented. Like, what is talent? Is it a thing that artists have, or is it hard work? That whole debate.
Talent comes from hard work. So talent is like the outpouring of hard work, I guess. I don't mind when people say I'm talented. Like, I understand what they're trying to say. They're trying to say that they love what I do, but there's this insinuation that I didn't like have to work my butt off to get there, and that like that anyone can't be an artist. Like, I really do believe anyone can be an artist. It doesn't matter how old you are. You can push yourself and you can make something beautiful. But like when people use talent, they almost use it as like that's like their excuse for not trying to make something meaningful, is that they'll say, oh, you're talented and I'm not talented, so like I shouldn't even bother trying. Or, like, I don't believe that. I don't buy that, because that singles out, that rules out any, other people becoming, artists or doing what they love, and doing something, making something meaningful. So, and I'm not perfect, like I'm not amazing, but like I have worked so hard to get to where I am. So that's one of those fables that really gets to me. And you know that too, because like you didn't just start writing necessarily. Like you had to work. Like, come on, you had to work for it, right?
Yeah, like I can show you stuff from a couple years ago, and you will not say I have talent. It's just a process, and it takes a long time to hone your skills. Like I've read my old writing, and it's weird because like I remember in the moment writing that I thought it was really good. And then I look back at it, and it's not very good now by my standards.
But you had to strive to get to where you are now. Like there was art block, and there was creative block, and there was all this frustration in between now and then that you had to put yourself through and go through in order to get better. And I don't like when people disregard that as something that doesn't, because that's like 90% of me creating isn't me. 90% of me creating is that striving, and that we keep saying that like self-conflict, like that's what it is. It's me looking at my old stuff and being like, oh, this is crap, I want to get better. Am I making something important? Does what I make even matter at all? That's all behind the scenes happening. And then there's that little 10%, which is like actually creating. I know. I'm not really playing up like being an artist, I know. I guess it is worth it at some point, but...
At some point.
At some point, I guess. When I'm making money. I don't know. No, it's worth it before that. Ignore that.
You'd go insane without it. I would go insane if I couldn't write.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I always think about what George said when he said like he can't picture himself doing anything else. And I really don't, like, I can't do anything else. Like I can't juggle, I can't sing, I can't, like, I don't know how to do anything else. I don't know how to fix a car, like, all I know how to do is art, so I have to do it, and I think I would go nuts if I wasn't able to create.
And like I do a lot of different creative things. Not every one of them I think is like going to be a career. Like I love to sing just because, and I like to play guitar, and I'm not very good at those things, but I love to do it, and it's just a creative thing that I love. And I like, if I couldn't do that, and if I couldn't draw, if I couldn't write, if I couldn't sing and hum to myself randomly all the time, like I would probably go insane. And I can't exactly say why those things are so important to me. Like I can't exactly put into words why I feel like I would go insane without them, but it's just this visceral feeling like I would.
Yeah. I try to think about what it would be like with, not being a creative person. Like I look around at my brothers and sisters, and I'm like, because I have a lot of siblings, and I'm like, how do you do it? How do you just like, walk around and not like feel this huge pressure to be making something that's gonna last? Because I feel that a lot. I'm so dramatic, but
Um, well, like, what kind of art is your focus right now? What are you pursuing as like the kind of art that you want to make a living off of? What's your like ideal
oh,
end game art? I don't know.
well, I look at people like Loish and like Brett Helquist who are doing book illustrations. I think that would be a really nice end all kind of. Um, I don't want to be doing graphic design for the rest of my life. I think ending up being an illustrator would be nice. I think that would be a nice end all. Um, Working in groups, I used to not like that, but now I love collaborating. So maybe something like some sort of team project, video game, would be cool. Right now, I'm actually after Fablebreakers, after we wind down Fablebreakers, I'm going to be doing my first webcomic / graphic novel. So yeah, that's kind of my big project, and I look forward to releasing like more of those kind of projects. But this will be my first one, so I really want to see how it goes. And it's a small like graphic novel. I don't graphic novel sounds really like pretentious. It really is only like 60 pages. It's very small. So, but like maybe that's something to like these are all like viable things that people actually do. So I have a lot of options, but I don't think I'm rushing to get to any of them necessarily. Like when I see an opportunity, like I'll take it. But I'm just kind of taking my time right now with my own personal projects, like the graphic novel and like Fablebreakers. So yeah.
Yeah. And so you talked about maybe doing a video game project. So how is that maybe different from graphic novels, but what makes video games seem like an attractive area to you to pursue?
Um, I think more and more video games are becoming a very useful communication tool. Maybe they always have been, but I'm only just now realizing how powerful they can be because there's that interactive element. Art is interactive in some ways. You have to look at it and fill in some gaps, but it's video games are more interactive than movies, more interactive than writing. Um, Even so that they're now getting more immersive with things like VR. So you're involving people in very visceral, more and more visceral experiences about things that are important, themes that are important, and you're letting them experience things in a way that is very involved. And I have a lot, I have a lot of, I think, what are important things to say, about issues that I'm very passionate about. A lot of them are kind of serious, but I think that if I can reach people through video games, maybe they'll listen to me. Maybe they'll want to listen to me. And there are whole communities that like I'm not necessarily, and people that I'm not reaching right now through just my art. So maybe putting together a video game will help me, get that message through. And also, I just love video games. I've always been playing video games with my siblings, and when I was younger, all I wanted to do was play video games when I was a lot younger. After school, I was homeschooled. I would just finish my school early, and I would run down, and my friend gave me this NES emulator. It was like 800 Nintendo games that I could play on the computer, and like I just had that was the most fun I've ever had in my life. Was more fun than like going to like a theme park or doing anything else I could have ever done. Was sitting there and playing. My sister would play mostly, and me and my brothers would watch. But like we would like just have just the best time ever. Just had a total blast. Just goofing off, and like I want to give that to other people too. Like how much fun would that be to create something that gives people that experience? So I want to recreate that experience for other people too. But maybe and if it affected me in that so strongly in that way, like if how much more powerful would it be if there's an important message underlying the game too. So I've started thinking about more and more video gaming, but it's a very technical process as well. I don't know how to code right now, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to learn that eventually. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Well, to round off the episode, I guess we could do our classic advice question. So, is there a specific audience of artists you would like to give advice to? Maybe if you think about a moment in your artistic life where you felt really unsure and you would have liked to have advice given to you, what would you say to an artist at that stage?
I like that you said an artist at that stage, because I maybe I can't give advice that's universal to everyone, but if I could give like advice to my younger self,
give that train a second.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, that's not why I was pausing. I'm actually thinking.
I was just making it.
Well, and keeping in mind that like it is, like I said, it's like the only thing I can do. Just do it well. I think looking back is really important too. That's something that always keeps me going. So I look back at the things that I've created, and past Jake, you're going to be super disgusted by a lot of the stuff that you've created previously, and you're going to want to tear up your sketchbook and throw it in the garbage. I've done that before. That's really dangerous. Don't do that, because when you hold those things that you created previously and you look back, like, you are going to see progress. If you're always striving for something better, like, you are going to see progress, and the only way you're going to see that progress is if you have something to look back on. So I went through a weird phase where, like, I would just, like, throw out my sketchbooks because I was so upset by what I created, and that was really detrimental to I think my growth at some points. Now I have all my sketchbooks in my bookshelf behind me. I keep them all, and I do, like, look back at them every once in a while. I'll pull them all out. They're all in chronological order. I'll pull them all out, and I'll, like, grab a sketchbook from 10 years ago, and I'll say, well, this is really bad, and then I'll pull my sketchbook that's current, and I'll get to compare them, and there's so much power in that. There really is, to look back and to look now at how far you've come. So don't be afraid to look back at and don't be afraid to make mistakes. I know that's probably something that a lot of our other guests have said, but, like, you're not going to move forward if you're too afraid to make mistakes. It's okay, like, make mistakes, but keep the mistakes too, so that you can learn from them. So yeah, that's really important. If I had one piece of advice, I would tell past Jake to keep those sketchbooks. I really wish I had those older ones to look back on, and those older projects to reflect on. Yeah,
I think that's an important piece of advice for most artists too. Just, one, don't be afraid to make a mess.
Yep.
And two, don't be afraid to look back at all the old stuff that you think is really bad.
Yeah.
Because it can remind you of how far you've come, and it might be cringy for you, but if you can get past the cringiness, I think it's a good exercise to just remind yourself that you have made progress, because I think it's so easy to get lost in the trouble that we're going through in the moment, thinking that we're not good at what we're doing, and we forget how far we've come.
Yeah.
So, well, that's it for this week's episode. If you'd like to see more of Jake's awesome art, you can find him on Tumblr, Facebook, and Instagram as Jake Romano Art. If you're into busting up fables, then subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Tumblr, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter at Fablebreakers.
And until next time, which will be a special final episode for this summer, I'm your host, Jake Romano.
And I'm Carly Racklin, and you've been listening to Fablebreakers.